Good afternoon. My name is Paige Beckwith, and I'm the Keep Noonan Beautiful Director for the City of Noonan. And today we're going to talk about recycling and how you can properly recycle at your house, in your community, in your office, and any place you might live here in Noonan or Coweta County. There's many different reasons that you might want to recycle. You know, you might not know why it's important. Maybe you don't know what to recycle. Maybe you're not sure if you recycle all of your plastic, or if you can recycle something where you live, but you moved from Florida, and in Florida you could recycle something different. So we're gonna try and cover those topics and give you some answers and some information on how you can be a better recycler in your neighborhood. The average person disposes of 4 pounds of trash per day, which leads up to 1.5 tons of trash per year. That's for one person. So if you have 4 people that live in your house, do the math on that. That's a significant amount of trash that you go through, that we all go through as Americans and as citizens in our community. Americans throw away an estimated 254 million tons of trash every single year. The EPA estimates that we recycle only 34% of the trash that we create. It's estimated that we could recycle up to 74% of the trash that gets sent to the landfills. So let's talk about how you can make a difference and why that's important, and talk about the amount of trash that you actually produce. Talking about the amount of trash that we actually produce and have as an individual and as a family and also as a country, when you look at the different pictures and what it's equivalent to, it's quite impactful. So as an individual person, you might do 4.5 pounds of trash per day, which could equal the weight of a cow or the height of the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Your family might do 17.4 pounds of trash per day, which equals the weight of an elephant or the length of the Golden Gate Bridge. And then our country, as the United States, does 695 tons of trash per day, which equals 254 million tons of trash per year, 60.9 billion feet, which is enough trash to reach the moon and back 25 times. That's pretty significant. And it's important to understand ways that we can possibly reduce that amount. At some point, we're gonna run out of landfills. We're gonna run out of places to put this and bury it in the earth. So finding ways that we can recycle and reuse certain things is extremely, extremely important. Another component and another reason we should look at recycling as a possible solution to some of our trash issues that we have is the amount of gas that occurs and that is created in the landfill. When you look at the gassiest states, Georgia it ranks number 2 in the Southeast. So it's just behind Florida, but we're significantly higher than Alabama or even South Carolina. Why is that? What are we not doing here in Georgia that they do different in other states? Georgia's the 2nd highest producer of methane gas. We talked about that. And then Americans throw away about 28 billion bottles and jars every single year. If you look at other things that could be recycled, Americans threw away 9 million tons of glass in 2009. Think about all the glass you might use. Spaghetti jars, salsa jars, beer bottles, wine bottles, all of those things can be recycled. Now, you may not be able to recycle them here in the city of Noonan, but we do have locations that can take your glass for you. So we're gonna talk about that as well. But all of these reasons are great reasons to get behind recycling at your house and figuring out how to do it correctly. Recycling is good for business. It reduces costs, it conserves energy, and it supports sustainable practices. It also helps to significantly reduce greenhouse gas pollution that's also caused and influenced by driving and climate changes. Recycling creates jobs, and a lot of communities are investing in recycling for that reason. You'll hear people say that recycling is not worth it, that there's low commodity prices, that cardboard doesn't get the money that it used to get, that paper doesn't, pay. That plastic, a container or a pallet of plastic is not pulling the dollars it used to. And there's some truth to that, for sure. There's lots of conversation of what went on with China. China sent back a ton of our old recycling. We used to just send them our garbage with it. Essentially, it was our garbage recycling that we used to send overseas. And when they shut that down, it did become an expensive issue, and it did create some problems here in the United States. But I can assure you that there's several locations and several ways that we can recycle that's actually used in the community that does create jobs and do things. In fact, in LaGrange, there's a carpet company that actually recycles their carpet tiles and they reuse them to make more carpet. So it's kind of a really interesting set up for that. There's also, if you look at the carpet industry up in Dalton, Georgia, a lot of their carpet is now made from 75 to 100% plastic bottles. So when you're drinking water, if you recycle that water bottle, it could become a rug someday. And we've got businesses here in Georgia that are actually making the effort to prove that and to keep things out of our landfill and also create not only jobs, but great products that are made out of these materials. So that's one of those things that you want to keep in mind when you're looking at recycling properly and why it's important. The other thing is that recycling also extends the life of several materials. So aluminum, if you're recycling your aluminum can, within 60 days, it's going to be a new can again. That's how fast the recycling is working right now in the industry, especially with metal. Metal's still got a great price with recycling, and we've got 3 different companies here in Georgia that are actually clamoring for aluminum cans. The reality is that recycling in the United States is a vibrant activity and a key driver in domestic and global manufacturing. It supplies more than 130 million tons annually of scrap metals, paper, electronics, plastics, rubber, glass, and textiles for manufacturing into new products. Domestically, the scrap recycling industry directly and indirectly supported more than 470,000 well-paying jobs and also generated $106 billion in economic activity. And that equaled $11.2 billion in federal, state, and local tax revenue in 2015. So these numbers are great, they're important. Also really it's a wonderful reason to take an effort to recycle your things at home and to do it properly. So why is recycling important in Georgia? We're talking about the state and the our country as a whole. We're going to break it down into little pieces as well. So let's talk about the state and why it's important. Georgia has the second largest infrastructure for end use of recovered materials in the United States. There are 120 manufacturers that use recovered materials in manufacturing. That's a lot. Georgia's got one of the largest pulp paper industries in the nation. There's 15 mills that actually use recycled content, and 8 of those are actually 100% recycled material. Our local MRF, which is the place that we take our recycling to be sorted out and distributed to these companies, is Pratt Industries, and paper is one of their biggest money-making things. They turn that into boxes, they turn it into new cardboard and other important materials that cardboard's used for. So they're right here in our backyard in Conyers, and they've also got a place in Fairburn, if I'm not mistaken, as well. So another thing is Novelis. We were talking about aluminum and why aluminum is so important. They're one of the largest aluminum manufacturers in the world, and they're headquartered here in Greensboro, Georgia. They're working on actually also making and producing aluminum cans. So think of solo cups. They do cans and all that stuff normally, but if you know what a solo cup looks like, there's conversation and there's production of aluminum solo cups that'll be at big stadiums and big outside concert events. Georgia's also known as the capital of the world. We talked about Dalton, we talked about the other company in LaGrange and what they're using in their carpet materials, and plastic is one of our biggest issues as far as garbage and trash is concerned. The convenience of having a plastic bottle is so incredibly important, whether it's water or whether it's everybody likes their Coke or their juice or something that's made in a plastic container. But then what do you do with that? Do you throw it in the garbage? Does it fly out of the back of your truck? Do you leave it to roll around in the base of your car? Does it go in the recycle bin? Everybody has all of these choices, but if you drive down the road, most likely you will see a piece of plastic at some point on the side. And it does cause a lot of problems, not only in the environment, but in infrastructure of sewers and septics and things like that. So when you're looking at items that would be the most important to recycle, plastic could very well be one of those. And part of that is because it's used so much here in the United States for the convenience of it. The mills up in North Georgia, the fact that they've been able to change over as far as what they're using for production of carpet into plastic bottles is pretty amazing. It keeps that plastic out of our landfills and off of our streets, and it also gives it a second life, which is wonderful. Currently, those mills are using 1/3 of all the PET plastic bottles that are generated in the United States. And what that means is they don't have enough plastic that just comes from Georgia. So they're actually sourcing materials and sourcing their plastic bottles that they're recycling from other states and other areas around the world, which is, it's kind of shocking that they can't get it all here. If we're throwing away 74% of trash when we really could be recycling more of that. Think about how that could change their expense of having to go out of state to pick up plastic to recycle. We also have 5 glass manufacturers here in the state of Georgia. Owens, Illinois is in Metro Atlanta, and all of those glass manufacturers are struggling to find glass that they can recycle and get from our residents here in Georgia, in our state. They're driving out of state again to get glass that could easily be recycled here. There's a couple of reasons for that, which can be frustrating on my end, just because we need the materials, these companies need the materials, but when you're looking as to why people aren't recycling it, we don't make it easy for you to recycle glass. And people tell you it's not important. You cannot put it in your bin at the street side. Like, it cannot go at the corner in your blue bin. It actually has to be taken to a different location. So there are locations here in Coweta County that will take your glass for recycling, and it's important that you make sure, if you're gonna recycle glass, which we really want you to do, that you take it to those compactor stations, and we'll talk about that again in a second. The biggest threat to the recycling industry is contamination. It's imperative that if you recycle, that you do it correctly, and when in doubt, that you throw it out. Contamination could be anything, we were talking about that. Simply throwing your glass in your recycling bin at the street, that's contamination. Because guess what? Those sweet little truck drivers that come and pick up your recycling, they're not gonna sort out your glass just because it's not supposed to be in there. They're there to just dump and drive. That's their job. They pick it up, they dump it and drive it. So if you've put a glass bottle or a spaghetti jar in that container, you've essentially contaminated your whole container of recycling and possibly the rest of the truck. And what that means is that that's not quality material. So either the MRF will throw it away and they'll send it to the landfill to go in the dump, or they'll use it for burning. Sometimes they'll use it for energy production. So they'll put it in a furnace and they'll use it to produce energy that way. But if you're contaminating your recycling at the street that you've worked so hard to do, and it gets in that truck, you're contaminating all of the things that are in that truck, and that's a huge problem. Sometimes it's on accident. Sometimes we bag our recycling. I know I was very guilty about bagging my recycling before I took this position. I had no idea that when I would put everything in my Publix bags, I'd sort out my plastic and my whatever, and I'd put that bag in there with all my recycling, and I had no idea that that didn't get emptied, that the people that pick it up don't, oh, duh, I'm gonna take that stuff out of the bag and I'm just gonna dump it in the back of the truck, and that was nice of her to organize it. They don't, they dump it, bag and all, in there, and what happens with those plastic bags, and those tend to be a lot of the problem, one of the largest problems, is when they get to the MRF and they dump everything out on this automated conveyor belt, it flies around like it's a piece of paper. So it gets stuck on the gears, or it might get stuck on other machinery there and it breaks it, which means the MRF is down, which means there's more expense for producing a better load of recycling for whatever reason that is. It might get stuck in the paper. So when they go to mill out the paper, that could contaminate what's in the paper. So it can cause a huge mess. So it's important that you don't bag your recycling. If you bag it in your house, then take it out and empty that bag into your blue container at the street. Another way that contaminating causes a big problem is if you leave food in the containers. So if for some reason, let's say you had green beans last night for dinner and you dumped out the can and there was one green bean left in the bottom of it, would that ruin the whole container? Maybe. But it's an actual issue. Like, people don't rinse out. You need to rinse out your recycling, things that you're recycling. Not wash them. Don't wash them by hand. Don't put them in the dishwasher. That just wastes valuable resources in that sense. But do a quick little rinse. Go shake it over the garbage can. Get those last 5 green beans out, and make sure that your cans are empty and dry when you're putting them in the recycling bin. That's very important, because the liquid in the food can also leak onto other things and then contaminate, whether it's the cardboard or the paper, other recycling that you might have in your blue bin. On average, 25% of recycling is contaminated. That's a huge amount. You've taken all of that time to go through and recycle efficiently at your house, and you've saved every plastic bottle, and you've got all your paper in a pile, and you've done all that stuff, and you've worked so hard to that point. You throw something in there that's still wet or has food on it, and you could have just ruined all of your effort to recycle what was in your container. So it's important that you just take that one extra step to make sure that you don't get food or liquids or things on your recycling. Another thing that happens all the time with recycling I call it wish cycling. So a lot of times people will go, oh, here's my plastic hose, for example. It's plastic, so I can put it in my recycle bin because it can be recycled. I'm not gonna use it anywhere here. I'm just gonna put it there. So instead of finding the correct place to dispose of something, people will put it in their recycling bin. Again, making the assumption that that sweet little truck driver or that the people at the plant that are sorting through your recycling are gonna actually take it out and do something else with it. So, so don't wish cycle, don't say, oh, I'm gonna put my glass bottle in there because I don't wanna take it to Coweta County's compactor sites, and I'm certain somebody will get it out. So it's important that you make sure that you know the local rules for your area, wherever you live, whether it's you stay here in Coweta County in the city of Newnan for the next 50 years, or whether it's you move from here and you go to Florida. They accept different things. There's gonna be some different rules down there. But it's super important that wherever you live in our wonderful country, that you make sure that you know what is acceptable in your local area for recycling, because it's gonna differ. And if you're ever in doubt on when to recycle where you live, just throw it out. We always say, when in doubt, throw it out. That's a much better attitude to have versus, oh, let me just pile it all in the recycle bin. Risk contaminating all of the recycling that we've worked hard to try and get locally. So a couple of different things. So let's talk about why recycling varies or what makes it vary in different locations. Just a few examples. So Peachtree City, it's not very far from us. A lot of people might go there to do shopping. They take cardboard, corrugated cardboard only. The residents have to break down all the boxes. They'll take newspapers and magazines. They'll take mixed glass, clear and colored, and they'll even take books that can go somewhere different. They don't take aluminum. They don't have aluminum cans that they can put in their recycling bins at the street. Carroll County is another great example of some differences. They'll take, only 2 of their places will take plastic. They want everything to be rinsed out and clean, and they want you to put the caps on them. And then they don't want any plastic bags or wraps. And then here in Coweta County, just to look at what the county will take and accept at the county compactor sites, they'll take glass, aluminum, mixed paper, and cardboard, and then they'll take plastics, numbers 1 through 7. If you're looking on recycling your plastic, a lot of times you can look on the bottom of a plastic container or on the lid. Sometimes it's on the side. We don't always do a great job of labeling plastics and what can be recycled. And in most cases, there's a number 1 through 7. The number system at some point will probably become obsolete because what we're learning for what works the best with recycling containers, especially plastic, MRFs can only handle certain types of plastic. And now that we've moved into some different containers and different packaging opportunities, for example, the clamshells with strawberries and blueberries and that kind of stuff, and they open like this and they have the fruit in them. Those items, I've always thought they could be recycled. They're PET. I'd take out the little thing and I'd put them in my recycling bin. But what I found out is that the MRFs don't have the machinery that can accept that as a plastic recyclable. So of course now I feel awful because I've told everybody, of course you can recycle those. But essentially that's contaminating the load because our MRF can't handle that weird shaped plastic, which is crazy to me, but that's just how it is. So so things like that, just because it has a number 1 through 7 doesn't always mean it's the right thing to recycle. So if it's not a jug, a jar, a bottle, a gallon, I guess that would be a jug. If it's not one of those things, most likely, if it's a weird shape like a clamshell, sometimes on those things you're just gonna have to put it in the trash, and that's still the best way because it provides the least amount of contamination when it gets to the materials recycling facility, which is the MRF. So little details like that are important, and it varies by wherever you live. If you go to LaGrange, they use a different MRF, and their MRF doesn't want any lids on their containers at all, so you have to take off every single plastic lid. Here, who we use in the city of Newnan, you can put your lids on there. They're also plastic. They should be able to be recycled. So it just depends on which company your community uses for their recycling purposes. So always check. I think the best thing on that is to check wherever you live and find out what your local community will accept in your recycling bin, and it does vary from county to county, and and even from city to county. It's an interesting issue that we have in the recycling situation. So if we were going to go through and talk about what we can recycle in the city of Newnan and what things can go in your blue bin, because that's really what we want to do. I want to help educate you on what you really can recycle and how you can do it correctly. If you have a blue bin, if you live in the city limits and GFL is your current contracted trash provider, they also pick up recycling for us. It's an included investment in your trash service that we provide as a city. And you can actually put in paper, cardboard, plastic bottles, aluminum cans, newspaper, computer paper, all of those things can go in your recycling bin. You need to make sure everything's clean and dry and that there's no food waste. That's very important. If for some reason you know it's gonna rain the night before you put out your trash, let's say your trash gets picked up on Thursday and you always put your trash out on Wednesday night, that's wonderful. You should do that with your big cans because sometimes they come super early. If it's gonna be pouring rain all night on Wednesday night, you might wanna wait to put your recycling out. If you've got one of those big blue bins that they do have available, obviously it's not gonna be an issue. You can wheel it right on out there. But if you have one of the smaller bins and you can wait and put it out early that morning, but maybe where it's not gonna be covered in inches and, of water, that would be a good thing to do. But it's important to listen. I'm gonna also give you a list of things you cannot recycle because I think some of these things we just assume that they can go in the bin or we don't know where to take them. So we just stick them in there. Like I said, you become a wish cycler because you just figure there's some little elf that's gonna take care of it for you. But these things cannot be recycled in your Noonan Blue bin. Plastic wrap or film, styrofoam, tape, ink cartridges, pens, binders, electronics, grocery bags, paper towels and napkins. They're paper, but they can't go in your bin. Coffee cups, plastic lids, laminated items, or random plastic containers. One of my favorite things, I love Racetrack. I like to go get their little $1 cups, with their drinks and go get a soft drink over there. And they've got these fabulous lids that sit on top and the straws and whatever. And some of them now say that they can be recycled. They have a little triangle with the recycle symbol, and those cannot be recycled in your blue bin. Even though it says it can be, it's not something that our facility can take. And that's because of where we live. So in California, in Cobb County, even on the north side of Atlanta, they've got the capabilities to handle those types of small plastic materials, but it's just not something that we have in our local community. So please don't put those items in your recycle bin. While you cannot put glass containers in your blue bin at the street, you can actually take your glass to Coweta County's compactor sites. They're free, they don't cost you a thing. There are 16 of them around the county. Some of them are only open one day a month or one day a week, and some of them have limited hours, so it's important that you check with the county website or check the Keep Noonan Beautiful website. We've got resources for you to find out the hours for those for their operations, so you don't drive over there and get mad at me because I said go take your glass. But if you wanted to find out that, certainly you can reach out to us or to the Carnegie, and we're happy to share that information with you. But if you can take your glass to those facilities, it's a great way to recycle it, and it's also a great way to help it get back in the recycling stream that's so important that we talked about earlier. Other places you can recycle things that were on the no-no list: plastic grocery bags. That's one of my most favorite things and hated things at the same time. They're certainly convenient for us when we go and get our groceries and we don't have a reusable bag with us. But they also are a dreaded, horrible thing as far as the environment's concerned. They blow around super easily. They fly out of trucks. They're easy to fall out of a garbage bag or garbage can. And so inevitably it ends up being one of the largest things of litter that we see in our community, in a lot of communities. So, but a lot of people don't know that you can recycle those. So if you saved your grocery bags and held on to them for a month, stored them somewhere and just kept them dry, made sure they were clean, if you're not gonna reuse them to pick up doggy waste or put baby diapers in or stuff like that, you can put a group of them together, like I said, keeping them clean and dry, and you can take them and deposit them. And most of the grocery stores locally have an outside garbage can. That's what it looks like, but it's specifically for their for grocery bags. So I know Publix has them, Target has them, Lowe's has one, and you can recycle dry cleaning bags there as well, bread bags. There's lots of different locations where you can take those, and so you can recycle them if you're not going to reuse them. And that's a wonderful way to keep those things out of the mainstream and out of the environment, which is important. Paper towels and napkins and coffee cups. Obviously, if they're all paper, you would think that they could be recycled. I'm just going to rinse it out, make sure it's dry, and throw it in there. The problem with that is, again, the facilities don't have a way to manage those particular items and materials and to get them made into cardboard or whatever else. So the best way, if you want to recycle those and you want to use those, is composting. So we're gonna talk about composting in a minute. I'm gonna leave you with some information on that because there's a lot to learn, and maybe we'll do that in another video. But those items, paper towels, napkins, if you've used them, you can certainly recycle those, but you don't put them in your bin, you would recycle them in your compost station. So if any of you compost, that's a great way to add those to it. Electronics, things that are difficult, electronics, paint, stuff like that is something you can certainly reach out to my program with. We offer different events that will help you recycle those items here locally, which is kind of nice. There's a little fee for a few of them, but for the most part, we try to offer those services to you free, because the goal for us is to help you keep things out of the waste stream, how to help you keep things out of the landfill. Because at some point in Georgia, we're going to run out of dirt to dump stuff in, and it's important for future generations for us to find an efficient way to recycle and or reuse things as much as possible. In closing, Keep Noonan Beautiful is a program that's here for you as a community. We're funded by the City of Noonan, so Noonan is what's near and dear to our hearts, but we certainly answer questions from residents all over. We incorporate as many residents in our community and in our county as often as we can. For the most part, we do a great job of servicing the whole community, because what we put in the landfill, how we recycle, affects our whole environment and the earth as a whole, and our state and everything. So any way that I can help you answer questions, or that I can help you figure out how to recycle, if you need a recycling bin, I'm able to help you figure that out too. You get a free recycling bin if you don't have one. You can pick two sizes. There's one that has a lid on it that's larger, and then there's one that's a smaller little. If it's just you probably don't need a big huge container, but there's smaller ones that are available to you as well. So feel free to call me in the office. My office number is 678-673-5505. Or if you prefer email, my email is pbeckwith@cityofnoonan.org. Shoot me any of your crazy questions on disposal or proper recycling. I'm happy to help with any of that. If you've got some great ideas for composting or other projects you'd love to see us do, feel free to reach out to me for that purpose as well. I appreciate your time, and remember to recycle right.